Scary telling.
I am Tom, and I have a hobby that not many people understand. I collect the skin of my victims and add it to my wall of skin in my apartment. I live in a rundown ghetto area where people go missing all the time. There is no clear pattern to the abductions, but it seems like the disappearances have increased over the past few months. Most of the victims are between their 20s to 30s, well taken care of and in good health. That's what makes them perfect for my collection. Tonight, I added another victim to my wall. She was a young woman walking home from her job at a local bar. I knocked her out and threw her into the trunk of my car. She struggled and screamed, but it was no use. I am strong, and I am used to the noise. As I drove to my apartment, I couldn't help but admire my collection. I have almost every room in my 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment covered from wall to wall with the skin of my dead victims. They are my wallpaper, and they make me feel alive. When I arrived at my apartment, I quickly took the girl out of the trunk and dragged her inside. She was still unconscious, so it was easy to strap her to a table and start my work. I pulled out my tools and began to remove her skin. It takes time and precision, but I enjoy the process. It's like I am creating a work of art. As I worked, I couldn't help but think about the other people who have disappeared recently. There is no connection between them, no clear pattern to their abductions. One day it's a businessman on his way back home from an out-of-state meeting, next it's a college jock known for his performance. Tonight it was an athletic college girl. But I am careful. I make sure to clean up after myself and dispose of the evidence. I grind up the muscles and bones and flush them down the toilet. The organs and blood are turned into paint. And the skin, well, that's my prized possession. I staple it to the wall and admire my work. Tomorrow, I will go out and find my next victim. I can't wait to add to my collection. It's my hobby, my passion, and I am very good at it. After adding the skin of the athletic college girl to my wall of skins, I tried to relax and enjoy the fruits of my labor. But something was bothering me. I heard whispers, faint at first, coming from the wall. I tried to ignore them, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. However, the whispers grew louder and more frantic as the night went on. It was like they were calling out to me, or trying to communicate in some way. I started to feel uneasy, like I was being watched or followed. I tried to rationalize it, thinking that it was just the storm outside making strange noises. But the whispers persisted, keeping me up all night. They sounded like voices, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was like they were speaking in a different language, or in a way that I couldn't understand. The next day, I went about my business, trying to forget about the whispers from the previous night. I went out to find my next victim, careful to avoid getting caught or leaving any evidence behind. I brought her back to my apartment and started my work, but the whispers continued, getting louder and more persistent. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. The whispers were all I could think about, and they seemed to be coming from every corner of the room. I tore down some of the skins on the wall, hoping to find the source of the whispers, but they only grew louder. I began to feel like the walls were closing in on me, like I was trapped in a nightmare. I couldn't escape the whispers, no matter what I did. I started to wonder if my hobby was finally catching up to me, if the ghosts of my victims were coming back to haunt me. As the days went on, the whispers became more intense, driving me to the brink of madness. I started to feel like I was being watched all the time, like someone or something was always lurking in the shadows. I tried to tell myself that it was just my guilty conscience, but the whispers were too real. I knew I had to do something to stop the whispers. I started to research online, looking for any clues or explanations for what was happening to me. I stumbled upon a forum about paranormal activity and read through the posts, hoping to find a solution. That's when I found a thread about haunted places and the spirits that inhabit them. The more I read, the more I realized that my apartment might be haunted by the ghosts of my victims. I had never believed in ghosts or the supernatural before, but the evidence was too strong to ignore. I decided to seek out a psychic who could help me communicate with the ghosts and find a way to stop the whispers. It was a risky move, but I was desperate to regain my sanity and get back to my hobby. The night of the psychic reading arrived, and I was nervous as I made my way to the address the forum user had given me. It was a small apartment in a rundown part of town, much like my own. I knocked on the door, and a woman with long, dark hair answered. She introduced herself as Maria, the psychic, and invited me in. Her apartment was dimly lit, with candles scattered around the room. She asked me to sit down, and I explained my situation to her. Maria closed her eyes and placed her hands on my forehead, concentrating. After a few minutes, she opened her eyes and spoke in a hushed tone. I sense a powerful presence in your apartment. It's like nothing I've ever felt before. The spirits of your victims are trapped within your walls, and they're trying to communicate with you. I felt a chill run down my spine as she spoke. It was like everything I had feared was true. The ghosts of my victims were haunting me, and I didn't know how to make them stop. Maria told me that the only way to communicate with the spirits was through a seance. She asked me to invite my victims to speak with me, to see if we could find a way to stop the whispers. I was hesitant at first, but Maria assured me that she would be there to guide me through the process. I agreed, desperate for a way out of my situation. We sat around a table, holding hands, and Maria started to chant. It was like nothing I had ever experienced before, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The room grew cold, and the candles flickered. Suddenly, I heard a voice in my head. It was the voice of the athletic college girl, the most recent victim I had added to my wall of skins. She was calling out to me, begging me to release her from the wall. I felt a cold hand grip my ankle, and I looked down to see a ghostly hand reaching out from the floor. The other spirits were trying to communicate with me too, and I was overwhelmed by their presence. I tried to pull away, but the hand held tight. I felt like I was being pulled down into the floor, like I was sinking in quicksand. Maria tried to break the connection, but it was too strong. I was trapped, surrounded by the ghosts of my victims. They were angry and vengeful, and I knew I had to do something to appease them. Just when I thought I was lost, Maria pulled me out of the trance. I was back in her apartment, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. Maria told me that the seance had been successful, that the spirits had spoken to me. She explained that the only way to stop the whispers was to release the spirits from the wall, to give them a proper burial and let them rest in peace. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Maria helped me gather the remains of my victims and bury them in a nearby cemetery. It was a somber and emotional experience, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. As we left the cemetery, Maria turned to me and said, "You've done the right thing. The spirits are at peace now. But you must never forget what you've done. The past will always haunt you." I knew she was right. My hobby had turned into a nightmare, and I would never be able to forget what I had done. But at least the whispers had stopped, and I could move on with my life, haunted by the ghosts of my victims forever. After the seance with Maria, I thought that the worst was over. But I was wrong. The ghosts of my victims were not at peace, and they continued to haunt me, whispering to me day and night. Their voices were louder and more insistent than ever before. They were angry and vengeful, and I knew that I had to do something to stop them. But I didn't know what to do. The ghosts were not content with being released from the wall. They wanted revenge, and they were determined to make me suffer. They started to appear to me in my dreams, tormenting me with visions of what I had done to them. I couldn't escape the ghosts, no matter where I went. They were everywhere, in every room, in every shadow. I tried to ignore them, but they only grew stronger. One night, as I was trying to sleep, I felt something cold and clammy touch my face. I opened my eyes to see a ghostly figure hovering above me. It was the athletic college girl, the most recent victim I had added to my collection. She spoke to me, her voice barely a whisper. "You will never be at peace. You will always be haunted by us. You will pay for what you've done." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure disappeared, leaving me alone in the darkness. I knew that I was trapped, that the ghosts would never let me go. Days turned into weeks, and the ghosts only grew stronger. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything but the whispers. I tried to reach out to Maria, the psychic who had helped me release the spirits from the wall. But she was nowhere to be found. I felt like I was completely alone, with no way out. One night, as I was sitting alone in my apartment, I heard a knock on the door. I hesitated, wondering who could be visiting me at this time of night. But something inside me told me to open the door. I found myself face to face with the ghost of the businessman I had abducted and killed weeks ago. He was angry and vengeful, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You will pay for what you've done," he said, his voice booming with anger. "You will suffer for all eternity." I tried to run, but the ghost followed me, his footsteps echoing through the empty streets. I felt like I was going insane, like I was trapped in a nightmare. When I finally made it back to my apartment, I collapsed on the floor, exhausted and defeated. The ghosts had won. They had taken over my life, and there was nothing I could do to stop them. As I lay there, feeling the cold embrace of death, I realized that I had become a victim of my own hobby. My obsession with collecting the skin of my victims had led me down a path of darkness and despair. And now, I would pay the ultimate price for my sins. The ghosts of my victims had finally caught up to me, and there was no escaping their wrath. I was trapped in my own personal hell, haunted by the whispers of the dead. I knew that I had to do something to make it stop. I couldn't keep living like this, in constant fear and torment. I had to face my demons and pay the price for my crimes. I made a decision. I would turn myself into the police and confess to everything. It was the only way to put an end to the haunting, to make amends for what I had done. I called the police and told them everything. I led them to my apartment, where they found the remains of my victims and the wall of skins. I didn't resist, didn't try to run. I knew that it was over. As I sat in my cell, waiting for my trial, I thought about all that had happened. I thought about the ghosts of my victims, and how they had haunted me to the very end. I thought about Maria, the psychic who had tried to help me, and wondered where she had gone. And then, something strange happened. The whispers stopped. The ghosts were gone. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I knew that I had finally paid for my crimes, and that the ghosts had finally found peace. At my trial, I pleaded guilty to all the charges. I didn't try to make excuses, didn't try to blame anyone else. I took responsibility for my actions and accepted my punishment. I was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. It was a just punishment for what I had done. And yet, I felt a sense of relief. The haunting was over, and I could finally move on. As I sat in my cell, staring at the blank walls, I thought about the ghosts of my victims. I wondered if they had truly found peace, or if they were still out there, haunting someone else. And then, I heard a whisper. It was faint at first, but it grew louder and more distinct. It was the voice of Maria, the psychic who had tried to help me. She spoke to me, her voice soothing and comforting. "Rest easy, my child," she said. "The ghosts are gone. They have found peace. You can rest easy now, knowing that justice has been served." And with those words, I knew that it was over. The haunting was over. The ghosts were gone. And I could finally rest, knowing that I had paid the ultimate price for my sins.